This is not my normal voice. I have laryngitis, just so you know. Anyway, so I was in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, in my mid-20s, and I was working as a ski instructor. And at the end of the season, one of my coworkers has this big blowout party with kegs and like a bonfire in his backyard. And most of the people at the party are actually men, because in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, the ratio of men to women is 10 to 1. And most of the people at this party are like, you know, rich white guys from like the Midwest or the Northeast, and they just want to be ski bums for a while. But there are a few random people at this party, and one of them comes up to me, and he introduces himself as Dallas. I don't actually know if that's his name or not, but I loved the name. And Dallas is Southern, and he's from West Virginia, and I'm from Tennessee, and most people at this party aren't, and I just have a soft spot in my heart for rednecks. And this guy is like cartoonishly redneck. Like, he's like, one of the first things he said to me, he's like, so I'm from West Virginia, and do you know West Virginia looks like a middle finger? And he was like, I'm from right here, and he points to his knuckle. It's the same way someone from Michigan is like, I'm from right here, with their little mitten. And but they don't actually talk like that. He would say things like, you know, let's pluck a feather, little lady, and get us some wild turkey, you know. And he said things like darling and little lady and baby and whatever, because that's what Southern men do, and I thought it was hilarious. But you know, he was like, we were both adventurers. We were both whitewater raft guides, and I talked about, you know, I love to prove to men how strong I am, and I was like, yeah, I'm a whitewater raft guide. I live in my truck and blah blah blah, and you know, which I did. And he was like bragging about what a man he is, and how he was the West Virginia State wrestling champion when he was in high school, and how he'd run in bags for years to sweat off all that weight and starved himself, you know. So we're exchanging stories and having a good time. Just so you know, I'm not actually like attracted to this guy. I just think he's like hilarious. He looks just like a guy that I would be attracted to, because he's got like shoulder length hair and like a puffy jacket with like duct tape covering all the holes, you know, like my kind of man. But there's like no chemistry, so I was just joking around. And before I knew it, it was like the end of the night. It was like 2 a.m, and everybody had either left the party or was like crashing on the floor of my friend's living room. And across the fire, there's only 2 people left other than Dallas and I. And it's one guy. He looks like a redneck, kind of uglier version of the Russian from Rocky IV. Just a huge guy. And then he had a little sidekick, this scrappy little guy. I thought it like Schmeagol, kind of like, you know. And I had actually met these guys earlier in the night. The bigger guy was actually a cage fighter, and he had tried hitting on me, and I was like, ah. And then the little scrappy guy was like, called me a cunt because I wasn't like receptive to it. So I was like, I'm staying away from these guys. But now at the end of the night, I'm like right across from them, and they're like leering at me, and they're like talking shit. I can tell because like that, you know, they're like, they say like she, but I can't understand what they're saying, but I know that they got an issue. And then they start talking shit about Dallas, and they're making fun of his accent, and I'm like, what is going on here? And Dallas is like, well, baby, I hate to tell you this, but it looks like we got a fuck or fight situation right now. And I'm like, what is that? He's like, well, these guys came here hoping to fuck, and you're the only woman left, and you're talking to me, so they're not going to leave here till they fight. And I'm like, is that like real? And part of me is thinking like, wait a second, does Dallas think we're going to fuck? That's not happening. And then the other one, I was like, whatever, this is Jackson Hole. Everyone just gets high and skis all the time. But no, actually, the cage fighter, moments later, like, walks over to Dallas and just like, blah, 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 blah. And Dallas is like, let's go. And like, next thing I know, they're on the ground, and Dallas has him in one of those like homoerotic wrestling holds. He's totally got him pinned. And the cage fighter's like, all right, I'm fine, let me up, I'm gonna go. And Dallas is like, all right then. So he goes to walk away, and then, so Dallas turns to me to start talking, and the cage fighter comes back, sneaky, and grabs Dallas by the jacket and throws him on the ground and punches him in the face a couple times. And I'm just like, oh my God, because at this point, so this things just got like primal and crazy all of a sudden. Because, I worked in the outdoor industry for years. I'm used to like man versus nature and like saving people from drowning and like crisis, but I'm not used to like fisticuffs, man versus man. And like, I actually think Dallas might like die. I mean, this guy's a cage fighter. And there's blood everywhere. There's so much commotion that the dust being kicked up, I can hardly see what's going on. They're like rolling near the fire. And I'm almost about to go inside to like get help. This is one of those moments, I'm so used to hanging around men all the time and working with men and doing like man jobs that I almost feel like I'm a man sometimes. And then moments like this, I'm like, nope, I'm not a man. I don't know how to handle this. And so basically, Dallas finally like pins this guy in another homoerotic wrestling thing and totally wins. And finally, the cage fighter gives up. And Dallas is like, that's right. Now get out of here. And I just love the way he talks. It's so funny. And so these guys walk away with their tail between their legs, and then Dallas walks over to me, and he's got like holes in his jeans. He's covered in dirt and blood. His eyes are like clearly gonna swell up any moment now, and he looks so vulnerable. And he comes up and he goes, "Well, baby, I won." And I'm like, "Yes, you did." And he's like, and I'm also thinking, I'm like, did I cause this? Like, is this my fault? And he says, I need some help with my eye, though. And so I take him into the bathroom and go like all Florence Nightingale on him or whatever. And then I'm like, all right, it's time to, like, the party ended a long time ago. I'm going to bed. So I grab my sleeping bag and grab a place on the carpet in the living room because there's people scattered all over asleep. And he goes, baby, I don't feel like going home right now. Do you mind if I lay next to you? And I'm like, okay, and it's normal in my line of work to sleep next to guys all the time in sleeping bags, and it's not a big deal. So I'm like, whatever. So he lays there. He doesn't actually have a sleeping bag. I like zip up into mine, and he like sleeps on his shoes and has like no blanket or anything. And he starts spooning me. And I'm like, okay. Part of me is like, red flag, but then I'm like, well, whatever. I'm in like a full-length down condom right now. There's nothing getting between here. And so then he puts his arm over me, and I'm like, okay. But that's when I notice it's shaking. And I'm like, are you okay? And he's like, my heart's racing. I'm like, oh, the cage fighter got you still shook up. And he's like, no, my heart's racing because I'm lying here next to you. And I'm like, what? Like, I mean, part of me is like, oh, because I've actually, you should probably know at this point in time, I had actually never had a boyfriend, really. I lived in my truck, like I'm a gypsy. I just like bang guys every once in a while and one night stands, the healthy stuff like that. And so I'd never had a guy like talk to me that way or be like, sincere and warm like that. And so part of me is like, well, maybe I should just cuddle with this guy and whatever. And then that voice got in my head, the one that every woman in this room, I think, knows about. Even my prudest friends have done this, where they're like, well, when some man does something for them or saves them or like, it's just really nice. And they're like, maybe I should fuck him, because I've got tons of credit card debt and, student loans, I'm okay with that, but I'm not okay with sexual debt. And so I'm like, yeah, I should fuck him, like, throw the dog a bone, poor guy. And I was like, fuck or fight. He thought he was gonna get fucked because that's why he got in a fight. And so my brain convinces me I need to do this. And so I'm like, where am I gonna do it? And I'm like, there's people in the room, they're sleeping, where do they wake up? I was like, I know, I'll do it in the bathroom. So I nudge him, I'm like, hey, do you wanna go to the bathroom? And at this point, he's actually fallen asleep. So clearly, this guy is not doing any of this. This is all Melanie creating this drama. And I'm like, well, I was like, come on, don't you want to go to the bathroom? And he's like, I don't want to go to the bathroom. And I was like, I'm fine. I tried. I didn't say that, but I'm thinking, like, good effort, Melanie. So the next morning I wake up and I'm about to leave the party, and he goes, or it's not a party anymore, but I go, he was like, baby, can I get you some breakfast or something? You want to come to my house? And I'm like, okay, I don't. So I go, and we go back to his house, which is actually a double wide, and like cartoonishly Southern again, like TV on the milk carton and our milk crate or whatever, no furniture. So he gives me a tour of the house, and it just happened so fast, you guys. Like, I was like taking a tour of his room, and next thing I know, his head's between my legs, and I'm like, wait, no, oh my God, wait a second, this is not supposed to play out this way, but I'm already kind of in too deep. And he, I'm like, because at this point in my life, I actually hated when guys went down on me. Things have changed, just in case I end up dating any of you. Because I was like, I just assume men hate doing that. And if they do it, they want me to have an orgasm. And I'm so worried about not having an orgasm, I can never relax. And I can't say I don't like it because I don't want word to get out on the street that women don't like this. So I like take one for the team, and I'm like, yay, this is great, I'm like oohing and awing, whatever. But in my mind, I'm like looking at the ceiling and counting like things on the wall, and I'm also like making jokes because that's where my mind goes. I'm like, well, Melanie, you're in your own little porno now. Melanie knows Dallas, and and then he like looks up at me and he was like, you like this, baby? And I was like, yeah. I mean, he looks so determined on pleasing me. This is a really good man, and he's really good at what he does. It's me. And I'm like, I do, but you know what would be better is I want to feel you inside of me, I'm like, come on up here, So we like have sex, and he has his orgasm, and I feel great now because I don't have to feel obligated to giving him. I know it's crazy. Anyway, and so we both fall asleep, and then a few hours later he wakes me up, and he's like, hey, baby, I got you something. And he holds it, and he goes, look, chocolate chip ice cream. And I'm like, what? Just what I was hoping for breakfast. And so we eat ice cream together in bed, and I'm like eating this ice cream, and I look over at him, and I'm thinking, like, I see this, he's got, his eyes are like, blah, and I'm like, what am I doing here? Because this is actually a pattern of mine. There at one point in time, I'd actually slept with a guy all summer long when I was a raft guide in another state because he taught me how to rock climb. And I was like, well, he put so much time and effort into teaching me. At least I can do is sleep with him. And I'm like, what? Why? This is about time you stop doing this like obligatory fox, Melanie. So if ever I have a cage fighter, attack me or whatever, and I need someone to defend my honor in a fuck or fight situation, I'm gonna have to fight the urge to fuck and just say, thank you. Thank you.
Feels good.